Yes, good morning to you. That, of course, an error that was fed through to us because what it transpired was that one Golden Arrow and one My City bus were indeed satellite. A third incident was a thwarted attempt at a hijacking of a Golden Arrow bus. So as it stands, it was the two buses that were torched, of course, with multiple reports of vehicles being stoned in the township. I must tell you, we were here yesterday morning and it was quite volatile. We saw a huge police and law enforcement presence. They were patrolling the various routes and in some instances also accompanying and escorting buses as they picked up these scores of commuters that were indeed left with very little options in terms of public transport. We do know that here in the Western Cape, public transport, the taxis really carries the lion's share of commuters. I think it's something like 70 to 75% of commuters are reliant on public transport and indeed the taxi industry. And of course, with this 2-day stay away, they are severely affected. Now, just a short while ago, we made our rounds around the Khayelitsha area, also at Borchard's Quarry, where we see commuters standing along the side of the road. And also what we've seen is that private vehicles of, among other, security companies picking up their staff just along the N2 highway because it is not safe for them to enter the area while it is still volatile. I can tell you that this morning it does appear as though the high police visibility as well as the assistance by various law enforcement agencies has also now assisted in bringing calm to the area. We have not heard. The police say there have been no further reports of violence in this township. As a matter of fact, I spoke to the Western Cape Police spokesperson a short while ago, Brigadier Novella Putalwa, telling us that the entire metro at this stage seems to be very quiet this morning, save for, of course, a few tires that were burning earlier in Younger, but saying to us that there's also been a road that was blocked off in the Vredenburg along the west coast, and that, of course, where they suspect it could be a taxi strike related. But at this point, I can tell you that all is quiet in this area. Of course, we will know and remember that yesterday afternoon, police told us that they arrested 3 suspects were indeed apprehended in the township of Delft, not too far away from Khayelitsha, and in that taxi and sedan that seemed to appear to be harassing a furniture delivery driver vehicle. They found 13 petrol bombs. Of course, the police telling us that the suspects will go through the process and are due to appear in court shortly. But at the moment, I can report to you the peak morning rush is sort of safe to say over by now. But what we did see was people still queuing at the bus stations and stops to get some transport to get to work. SANTACO, of course, saying that they have completely distanced themselves from the violence that marred the first day of the strike yesterday, calling on the provincial but also national government to come to the party. You said there just now that they are protesting against the suspension of the Blue Dot taxi pilot program. That, of course, brought about by the provincial government to the tune of some 215 million rand. Of course, that incentivized drivers to make sure that they drive in a safe fashion. Also then a longer term to ensure that there would be safety on the roads for those thousands of commuters who make use of public transport. So as we understand at this point, the strike or the stay away continues. We haven't seen taxis operating at all this morning. We do expect then for the resumption of those services to take place tomorrow. We also do know that a march by COSATU to the Parliament today as part of the protest, the public service protest, they've called off that march because in a statement late yesterday afternoon, they said that there was no guarantee that their members would be able to use public transport safely, trains or buses, etc. So that march was called off, and now all eyes on the remainder of the day to see whether the situation, which is calm at the moment, remains so, and then the expected resumption of those taxi services come tomorrow morning.
Vanessa, based off your reporting, you're saying there has been no further reports of violence or damage to property. Do we get a sense that the threat yesterday by Safety and Security MEC JP Smith has been taken to heart, that people will be held accountable?
It's difficult to say because SANTACO has indeed distanced themselves. I mean, shortly after we did that interview with the MACO member for Safety and Security, JP Smith, I then called SANTACO again just to ask what their view is, saying, telling them, and they would have heard, that the city has said they will be looking into ways in whether SANTACO could be held at least civilly liable for the multi-million rands of damage that would have been caused to at least those two buses and other infrastructure. SANTACO saying that they are not responsible for it, but of course the city saying that when a strike is called in the taxi industry, it can be expected that there will be incidents of violence. I mean, the Premier of the Western Cape has, in a video that he released yesterday, called it a thuggery. And, you know, when one speaks to people on the ground, people that make use of public transport like taxis, many of them are saying to us that each and every time there is a strike in the industry, they are left scrambling to get to work. We do know that not everybody can afford, for example, forking out additional money for other forms of transport. So a major inconvenience to commuters, but also a loss in terms of infrastructure damage to companies like Golden Arrow, which lost a bus yesterday, and the My City bus that was torched. That kind of damage, according to the City of Cape Town, at some point they are delving in to see whether the industry or the body calling for the strike could indeed be held civilly liable for those damages. Difficult to say at this point whether indeed it was because of that statement that we've seen a sort of calm return to Khayelitsha today. I'm not quite sure whether that is the case, but I can tell you that no major incidents taking place around the metropole, according to the police today.
Do we know if any alternatives have been provided for commuters, Vanessa?
I can tell you that what we have seen is that quite a number of private vehicles I've mentioned earlier on, security companies, they've been lining sort of the N2 highway at the intersections, like for example at Spine Road, at Muway intersection. Those are intersections off the N2 highway coming into town, at Borchard's Quarry, at Nyanga, and that's where we've seen people, commuters, making their way out of the townships, waiting for their transport to collect them along those points. I do know that the provincial government has also made it clear to the matrics, we are in the middle of the matric exams, saying that if matriculants find themselves in situations where they cannot make it to the exam centres where they are registered, they should then make their way to the nearest centre and they will then be accommodated. And that was from the Western Cape Education Department, making sure that at least when matriculants need to get to a point to write the exams, that the lack of public transport or the violence that marred day one, that's yesterday, won't affect them to the extent where they can't get to the exam centres to write their exams.